Captain's Corner, where you get the opportunity to ask some of those nautical questions that you might have been wondering about throughout the week. And I hope that you did pick up a little fun fact sheet on the way in. And to answer some of your questions here this morning, well, of course, the most knowledgeable man here on board. Please put your hands together and welcome the master of the vessel, Captain Rob.
Thank you. It must be raining outside.
Morning, Captain. Morning. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to open the floor to you in just a second for, of course, some questions here today. So if you do have a question, just raise your hand. We have the wonderful Garcia and Isabella from our entertainment team here with a couple of microphones. They'll be running around the audience this morning. So when you have a question, just pop your hand up in the air and we will try and get to as many questions throughout the next 40 or 45 minutes or so this morning. And when you do get the opportunity to ask a question, just speak nice and loudly into that microphone for us as we come on around to you. So let's get started. Who's got the first question this morning? Is that a Foster? Foster's beer? I don't think so. Definitely not. It's got almost got the colour of it. Terrible beer, terrible beer. All right, down at the front here with Isabella.
Sir, how do you decide to tie up on port or starboard when we get to a port?
Yeah, good question. Well, in Roatan, we needed to exercise the lifeboats on the starboard side. We never get to go port side 2, except Roatan is about the only port we can do that on this 2-week rotation itinerary we have. So we are pretty much every other Roatan going port side 2, just so we can exercise the boats and do any maintenance we can really get out on the port side. And in Costa Maya, it's the swell that comes in from the northeast. If we go starboard side 2 and the seas are more than a meter, meter and a half, it starts to slam the stern. And it's not good for the azipods. So I anticipated the weather and decided to go port side 2. It's not so nice port side 2. The ship is designed for starboard side 2. So, you know, it's not the best traffic flow and all of that. But so I really try to go starboard whenever we can. But that's the real reason.
All right, question over here with Gus.
A couple of quick questions, if I may. I noticed when we left Costa Maya, we just about popped the wheelie. And which begs the question is, how long does it take to get to full speed from zero? That was the one question. And then the other one was a previous vessel. One of the others was in the fleet, but you can answer on the side of Independence of the Seas. It's somewhere along the waterline. It says chest. I'm just curious what that was. Maybe you might know.
Sea chest.
What was the last question? Sorry, I had a hard time hearing.
The around about the waterline on Independence of the Seas. There's I saw it on the side. It said chest.
Ah, right. That's the sea chest. That's where we keep the sea. It's the intake for the all the cooling water that we take aboard. So it's a huge line. It's like I can't put my arms around it. It's a giant intake for seawater, and we use it for a number of purposes, primarily for cooling. But we also use that for making fresh water when we're out at sea, and we can use it to ballast our ballast tanks and do whatever we need to do with the salt water. So the primary reason is for cooling. That's for the AC and for the main engines, primarily. The speed, yeah. Well, when we go from Costa Maya to Port Canaveral, it's full speed ahead. And the faster we get up to speed, the better. So do the maneuver on the engines that we need for the maneuver, and then just about when we're finished with the maneuver, I'll call up for one more engine, and we start ramping up. And she gets up to speed amazingly quick. So we can go in one ship length, we can get up to about 5 knots, which is quite good. And up from there. So to get this big thing moving, it takes a lot, but it goes. It goes quite well. Yeah. We're flying along right now. We got the Gulf Stream behind us finally. Yeah.
All right, over on the port side.
Good morning, Captain. Happy to see you. It's amazing to see how one navigates this huge gargantuan structure. But I'm grateful to be part of the the family here. I can see that you're a family person. Does the family stay here with you, or if not, how often do you get to see them?
Well, family can come anytime. It's one of our privileges, and they do from time to time. Yeah, so it's nice. Don't tell them that. I have more cousins than you ever knew. Anyway, yeah, it's really nice when they're here, I have to say, and it's just great to see them enjoy it. So we see it every single day as crew members, and we get kind of used to it. It's our home. We're here every day and so forth. But when we see the smiles and the impression that it comes from those who don't get to see it, or to see it for the first time, it's very rewarding.
All right, over back there with Gussie.
I'm from Summerfield, Florida, right outside the Villages. I have a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
This ship consumes about 22,000 gallons of diesel per hour at full speed. How big is your gas tank? And I've never seen this thing being filled. I mean, you'd need some big tanks somewhere.
Yeah, we do. We do have big tanks. We hold around 4,500 tons, and we talk in terms of tons, not gallons. It's about 250 gallons a ton. And for this entire cruise, we'll burn about 1,200 tons. But we hold enough to go across the Atlantic and back again if we're full, and still have a little remaining. We wouldn't do that, but we could. We keep our tanks usually 3/4 full, and we fuel every turnaround. We keep extra fuel on board. I mean, we don't take just what we need. We actually have quite a reserve. Should we ever have to deviate for whatever reason, we never want to have to worry about that.
It says here the bow thrusters are 7,500 horsepower. On the back, it's 75. I would think that
They're up forward.
I'm sorry.
They're up forward. The 4 bow thrusters are forward. The propulsion is aft.
How much horsepower is the propulsion?
Propulsion is 20 megawatts each. That's around 80,000 horsepower for propulsion. And each thruster is 7,500 horsepower. It's quite a bit. I mean, it's great. But, when you look at the size of the ship, puts it in perspective. There's a lot of sail area, so we're really exposed by the wind.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
We heard the other day there was a Alpha calling and a Charlie. Is that something you can disclose?
I have no idea. We have certain code words. I'm still trying to figure them out. It sends the teams that are assigned to certain duties. They know when they hear the word where to go, and that's. You'll have to get the microphones. Sorry.
All right, another question over here on the port side.
Morning. I just wondered how many people are on board this week and what capacity we are at.
Well, we can be sold out, but not in full capacity. And usually that's driven by the number of children we have on board. So all the cabins could be sold, but we're not at full capacity. So this cruise, we're around 6,400 and change. And, we can hold 69, 88. So we're what, 3/4, maybe 80%. So that's pretty good. But we're sold out. The ship is selling. I mean, it's remarkable. But it's actually hard to get, you probably know. It's hard to get the one you want.
All right, over on the aisle here.
My name is Shrivas and I'm from Ohio. I have a question. Who makes the route for the ship?
Who makes the route that we do? The itinerary? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's something we plan about 2 years in advance. So there's quite a process for designing and coming up with our itineraries. And it's done primarily from the office because they're looking at the whole fleet. And they have to put the ships where they think they're best and then organize it all so that we don't, overlap, so to speak, and try to get to the same pier at the same time, because that doesn't work very well. And so they'll send me the plan, their intention, and then I review it together with my team, and we'll go through it and make sure that there's no errors in it, or that if there's any challenges with that proposal, then we'll send it back to them with our recommendations, if we have any, which we usually do. And sometimes they'll get the speeds and the distances incorrect, and we'll write back and say, we can't make that time in this particular port because the distance and speed don't add up, because you've got us going across the land and the reef and stuff, and we've got to go around it. We don't have wheels. And that's the plan. It goes back and forth a few times, depending on how complicated it might be, or if it's a first-time itinerary or whatever it might be. And then we finally settle on it, and then they'll give us one last chance to, make our comments or raise our hand. And if they don't hear back, they'll post it, and then it goes up for sale. And we usually settle those about 2 years in advance.
All right, question down the front here.
Good morning. It seems that there are more and more stops where you use piers and not tendering. When you do tender, does this ship have virtual anchoring?
We do, and we don't tender. So Oasis class don't tender. We were never designed to tender, and we never will. Our boats are all lifeboats. That's it. And we're just not built for it. So we go to where there's piers, which is nice. Tendering is a bit of a challenge. Yes, we can virtually anchor. We use what we call the DP, the dynamic positioning. And once we get the ship in position, it's a system where I can activate, and the computer will actually operate the pods and the thrusters together and hold the ship in that spot, just like that. And it uses the wind sensors, and it senses the current. It's getting that precise GPS signal. We have the Doppler, which measures the current, and it'll anticipate over time. It starts to learn, and it gets pretty good at holding the ship. It's not perfect, because sometimes it uses a little too much power when it doesn't need to, and this is something I'll watch, if it's not set up properly, if the parameters or the inputs in it are not right, it can overcompensate and so forth, so it's kind of complicated. But once we get it settled, it's pretty good. We call that the DP. That's instead of dropping the anchor. Now, dropping the anchor always works. But it does come with its own challenges, too. We can drag it. As big as the anchor is, it's not as big as I'd like it to be. We have 2 of them. And we can drop them both, but you have to be careful when you do that so you don't tangle them. But, or, swing around on them. But all of that's possible. Mm-hmm. And we did a little bit of that during COVID, not here, but on our other ships. Yeah.
All right, down the front here.
Good morning. It's not a question directly related to Wonder of the Seas, but it's an important question that have been wondering for years now. What happened to poor Super Mario during the pandemic shutdown? Was he crawling the walls and locked in his apartment? How did he handle it?
He actually had to spend some money. I don't know. He probably went through withdrawals and had to seek help. I'm not sure where he is now.
I hadn't heard, so I thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
Over on the port side.
Thank you. I wanted to know, is it true what I saw on Facebook, that Royal Caribbean is coming out with a smaller class of ships, and I believe it was called Discovery. But I really wanted to know what you knew about this already, because some of the smaller ports on the East Coast that we like to sail from have bridges, and all the old ships are really old and wearing out. We'd like to have some new smaller ships? Thank you.
Yes, you're right. We can't get under those bridges unless we go really fast. We are going to build smaller ships. I don't know much more than that. This time, Facebook is actually probably correct. And they'll be beautiful and make Discovery sounds like a good name for them. You know, they're going to make that big royal announcement at some point. If they haven't already, I'm not aware of it. We're all having a big conference on the Icon in January. And we're going to go, the senior leadership is going to be there, and we're going to go for 5 days and have our annual conference. There'll be a lot of things discussed and announced at that point, and I'm guessing that will too. But yeah, we do have a plan in place, because those are markets that we don't want to give up. And yes, our Vision class ships are getting older, and every ship has an expiration date, and they are indeed reaching there. Yeah. So that'll come, indeed.
All right. Right there. Okay.
So, I have 2 questions. The first one is, how long does it take the ship to respond to your inputs?
Well, that depends. How fast she responds to my inputs, how fast we're going, and how much momentum we have in the other direction. So, you know, when you're maneuvering the ship, it seems like it's all happening really slowly. But it's actually, to the operator, it's happening very, very fast. And every moment and every second that goes by matters. So we have to time everything really to the second to be efficient in how we maneuver the ship, particularly alongside the pier. So the idea is to get her in and get her alongside as efficiently and quickly as possible and as safely as possible. So it's a fine balance how we do that. But the act of maneuvering is like that. When you're engaged in it, you're in that moment of concentration, deep concentration, and everything you do is to the second, really. You're trying to stay, as an operator, you're trying to stay ahead of the ship in your mind and anticipating and planning all the time. And in order to get this big ship alongside and make it as smooth and efficient and safe as possible, you have to stay ahead of the ship, in a sense. You do the same when you're driving your car. You know, you drive out in front of your car. You don't drive right off the bumper. And you're looking ahead. And we do the same here.
Alright, so my second question is, on the side of the ship, there's these things that say SWL in like 10 or 20. What are those?
That's safe working load. You're looking at the little bollards that are indented in the side of the ship. You know, there's a little cutout, a little cup there, and there are some bollards. And that's for small vessels to tie up alongside for whatever might be needed, either for maintenance or possibly fueling. Fuel barges and so forth can use those to tie up alongside the ship. So that's called safe working load. And then the number is the tonnage. So safe working load, that means it's 1/5 of the braking strain or braking load. So everything has got this huge safety factor on it. So if it says 40 tons, that's the safe working load. If you're going over that, you're going over the design limits for safe working load. Yeah. We use a safety factor of 1 to 5.
Right. It's about under the balcony there.
How many blades are on each prop, and why isn't there one more or one less?
Well, there's 5 blades on each propeller, and we are potted. If you don't know what that is, it's like a giant outboard turned around facing forward. We have no rudders, so it's just the propellers, and then we turn the propellers in the direction we want the stern to go. So there's 3 pods. They're all facing forwards. The blades, or the propellers, are about 21 feet in diameter. There's 5 blades, and they're pulling. They're pulling, not pushing. They're more efficient than the conventional propeller shaft, propeller, and rudder. All of that is drag in the water. The pod is very much more efficient and less wastage of of energy having that pod there without the rudder and propeller shaft. And the electric motor that drives the propeller is underwater in the pod right there, right behind the propeller. And they're pulling. So you have to think a little differently on a podded ship. If you want to turn to starboard, you're pulling your stern to port. And when you're maneuvering, you have to think a little differently. It takes a few times to get used to it. But that's the principle behind it. And they're arranged 1, 2, 3. The middle one is aft of the 2 port and starboard pods. There's a model, I think it's on deck 14, aft, just below the windjammer. It'll have it there to scale. You can kind of see it.
All right, over in the middle here.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Just a big loud voice, sweetheart.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like sailing the biggest ship in the world?
On a scale of 1 to 10, let me think. 12?
All right, next question up the back there again.
Hello, Captain. The Aqua show was canceled the other day, and I'm wondering if you can do something to stabilize the ship to avoid rocking, and if you actually do that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, the Aqua Theater there, the pool is hypersensitive to any motion, and oftentimes you don't even feel the ship moving, and there goes the pool, you know. So we have to cancel the shows when it's like that. If you ever stood up on the high dive platform and looked down, the pool is about that big. And it's not nice if you miss it. So we try to be as stable as possible. We always put the stabilizers out. I'll even change the heading of the ship to try and minimize the motion. But sometimes, and in this case, it's been very difficult to get that perfect condition for the show. I think there's 2 tonight, is that right? Or at least 1? 2, okay. So tonight I anticipate good conditions because we're really in protected waters by that time. We're off the Florida coast, we're protected by the Bahamas, and the conditions, sea conditions, should be good for the show. But sometimes, and you can feel it today, we're moving around a little bit, it's blowing 30 knots out there, so there's a little bit of a sea and just enough motion to make it difficult or impossible. So sorry for that. But yeah, we do what we can, and sometimes we can. Sometimes we can't. If I get the call, I'll run up there and see what I could do. Yeah.
All right, next one down on the aisle over here.
Good morning, Captain. Good morning, Chris. Captain, could you please describe your career path that brought you to this pinnacle of seamanship?
Sure, that's a long story. It goes back to when I was a little guy, and I was the youngest of 4 kids, and my dad was a captain, and being the youngest, I got to see my brother and sisters go to sea with my dad. And my brother in particular, he'd come back with a tin and lots of stories and trinkets and pictures, and it was killing me, because I was too young to go. So when I finally got to go, I got deadly seasick, but I loved it, and it's all I ever wanted to do. And school was just getting in the way. So I did manage to spend probably 15 or 20% of my time in high school away at sea. And as long as I did well in my studies, the principal would allow me to continue to go. And I always did better at sea than I did in school. So that was the beginning. And like most of us in the industry, we are exposed to it usually through the family and when we're young, and I'm no different. But I went to the Merchant Marine Academy on good advice in California. And when I went into school in the early 1980s, there were jobs, there was a bright future, economy was going okay, and everything was great. By the time I graduated, guys were getting laid off, ships were getting flagged out and sold. And it was not a good time to be a young cadet with the ink still went on his license looking for a job as a junior officer. But there was one industry that was actually growing, and that was the fishing industry in Alaska. And I made my friends and connections on the West Coast, and long story short, I went fishing. And I fished for 14 years in the Bering Sea on the big factory trawlers. And I was a captain for 10 years. We fished all over the Bering Sea and the Sea of Okhotsk in Russia and the North Pacific. And we even made it to West Africa. And my last year's fishing were in West Africa. And when we sold the ship in that venture, I was looking at going back to the Bering Sea and continuing my career or doing something else. And honestly, I thought at the time that I would probably be a fisherman for my whole life. This is what I knew. It's what I became specialized in. It's hard to get into and it's easy to get out of. It's very lucrative, but it's also extremely demanding, a bit dangerous and all of that. But I thought, you know, this is life, and what else is there? I knew that the cruise industry in general was building ships. And I was very intrigued by the beauty, the size, and the technology, and I didn't know a lot about it. I knew somebody at Royal Caribbean, and he opened the door for me, and that was the beginning of a whole new career. I had to start over again, and that was a huge leap of faith. I had to have a financial plan, and I knew I could continue if I could make the promotions financially, and if I didn't, I couldn't continue. But I did. And that was, my first ship was in 1999, and it was the Grandeur of the Seas, and I'll never forget. I joined her in San Juan, and when I went aboard, I was blown away. I couldn't believe how beautiful she was, how big she was, and how everybody knew what they were doing and where they were going, and I hadn't a clue. And I was not used to that. So I was highly motivated to learn as much as I could, as fast as I could. And I did. We had 10 ships in 1999, and now we have 28, and soon to be 29 and 30, and up from there. So this is how much we've grown, and the ships are 3 times as big. In that time, in that 24 years, that's how much we've grown. And now I've been with the company for 24 years, and been a captain with them for almost 19 years. And I've been on many different ships. And my first ship as captain was back on the Grandeur of the Seas. Yeah, that's my story. And I'm sticking to it.
All right, next question, Isabella. There we go, up the back there.
Hello, Captain. My name is Darlene. I'm from Ohio. My question is, I notice when we leave the different ports, we leave on time, but on Coco Cay, it took a while before we left, and I was wondering, was that on purpose, or was there any reason?
Well, there was a reason, and yeah, it was on purpose. We had a guest we had to get off for medical reasons, and we had to wait for the jet to come and land. And it was a long process. And it finally happened, and we were able to go. But that was, that's the reason. Sometimes it happens like that. Coco Cay is kind of hard to get to. As close as it might be to Florida, it takes a private jet to get to the nearest island. And then we have to get whoever to that island and on the jet. And once everything's safe and secure, then we go. We can sometimes get a float plane if it's daytime, and then it's right from the island to the plane, and then off they go. But that's the reason. Yeah, it happens.
Right down the front here.
Hi. Could you just say what it is in terms of miles per hour that we would be going right now?
Sure. Well, 1 knot is 1 nautical mile per hour, which is 1.15 miles per hour. So 10 knots is 11.5 miles per hour. 20 knots is 23 miles per hour.
And we're going 30?
No, we're going 22, 21.5 right now. So it's about 24, 25 miles per hour. So
and if I could, oh, I'm sorry.
For those who are metric, it's 1.852 kilometers per nautical mile, because there's 1,852 meters in a nautical mile.
And can you just share with us what would make you nervous as the captain of the ship?
Yeah, things happen around here, you know. Last night was a big one. I couldn't believe it. We had to call red condition. It's serious. Got the chief engineer and his team up there. It was brutal. I thought we were going to have to turn the ship around. Yeah. Coffee machine broke down. They're still working on it, as a matter of fact. There's like 3 guys up there. They got the thing in pieces all over the place up there. And I'm a little worried. We're going to have a technician come in Port Canaveral. It's no lie. I hope it's done by the time.
All right, Isabella, way up the back there with Isabella.
Hello. Just curious what your room is like, and if you eat the same food as everybody else, or do you have like a private chef maybe?
Yeah, you know, here it's a little tough. The pool is small. The jacuzzi only holds 4, and my sun deck has only got 3 chairs. I'm really kind of disappointed with that. I'm used to much more. My private chef is pretty good. Yeah. I just had breakfast. It's soon time for brunch, and then it's back to bed. It's okay.
Sorry.
I need to ask you a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Why isn't there a first or a 13th floor?
Why isn't there a first or a 13th floor? Well, the first deck, as we call them, decks, that's where the crew live, many of them. And that's where a lot of technical spaces are and everything that it takes to do what we do up here. Deck 13 is bad luck, so we removed it. You know, we found that a lot of guests just don't like to book their cabins on deck 13. So we decided not to have it. And that's the reason. Yep, that's a fact. Well, if you go in the elevator, you'll see there's no button for 13, but if you look on the overhead there, it says deck 13, so somebody messed up there.
All right, Isabella.
You told us about your history with your working. How does one come to get your job? Do you know ahead of time, oh, they're going to be building the Wonder of the Seas, it's going to be the largest ship. I'm going to apply for that job? Or does corporate come up to you and say, we would like you to be the master of the ship?
It's a kind of a mutual thing. They want to make sure I want to do it, or any of us. But and then they figure out who they want, and then it kind of comes together. That's the process. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. It kind of depends on a lot of things, particularly for a new build or a new first in class. So we'll see, how this all works out. When you do one takeout, you know the process, and it's extremely different than anything we do in operations. So once you have that experience and it goes well, they'll ask you again and again and again. And it may not be something you want to do again and again and again. It takes a lot. The takeout, to be the takeout captain and part of the takeout team, you're a small core in the beginning group. And you're gone for 7 months with about a 3-week break in the middle for Christmas. And it's full blast, and you are in your coveralls more than anything else. And you start by living in an apartment and driving to work, drive to the shipyard. And the ship is just a construction site. It's not able to you can't even move aboard. There's no electricity, running water, and all of that. So there's a point at which there is. And then you move out of your apartment and move into the ship. And it's there the process starts again. And there's like milestones and dates where we have crew move aboard date and the mass arrival date, and we're building the teams at the same time we're building the ship in the end, and it all has to come together. The process of building the ship has a deadline. We have to be done and built and in service on this date. Those cruises are sold, and there's pressure to make sure the ship is finished. And it's a very interesting process to determine if the ship is going to be finished, because looking at it, it's a work site. How am I going to know if the ship is going to be finished or not? Well, we have a process of graphs and milestones, and we call them S-curves, and in every area of the ship, we're monitoring the progress. And we know on a day-to-day basis the progress, and we know where we should be and where we are. And now we can track it. And if we're falling behind in one area and we're ahead in another, we'll work with the shipyard to try and maybe move some resources to where we're falling behind and get it going up in this area and that area, and making sure. And this is how we get a general idea of how we're progressing and if we're going to make it. And if not, then we have to take action early enough to make it happen. That on top of the mass arrival, the constant training of the new crew, the testing of all the equipment. It's going and going and going for months, right up until delivery. And then even the shakedown cruises that we do, and maybe some of you have been on them, where we invite some guests to cruise just for a few days, and we test our ship before going into service formally. And one of the things we're going to do in this conference in January is we're going to stress test the ship at the same time we have our conference. So a lot of people from the office will be there, everybody will be on board, and we're stress testing the ship before it goes straight into service. And that's the process. So by the time it's done, you're exhausted. And it's difficult to do it again and again, back to back. You need time in the middle. And you need to get back into operation, because operational experience is a whole lot different than takeout experience, and you need to have both to be effective. And if you spend too much time doing takeouts, you forget about the operational side of it. And you got to have both. So there's a lot of things to consider when we determine who's going to go and who's not going to go. That's the best way I can explain it.
All right, another question over here with Garcia.
Yeah, hi. Just a couple of questions. The looking out to sea looks like a bit of a wilderness. What do you see? What do you see most of, and how often? And how often do you deal with somebody overboard, and the success rate of getting them back? Thanks.
Yeah, you're not planning anything. No, it doesn't end well usually. I don't recommend it. It's always on the back of the mind, and it's not something nice. We can't control what people will do, and we'll do what people will do. But and we'll do what we have to, whatever it might be. So that's the story there. When I look out across the sea, that was the question, what do I see? Well, I look and I see swells and waves. And I look at where they're coming from. And I see them, and you will see, if you look carefully, the ground swell from the North Atlantic coming from this direction at such and such a height and period. And then you'll see the wind wave coming from this direction, crossing that swell. And you might even see a third set of seas coming in from another direction. And all of that combines to what we actually feel on the ship. So when I look out, I see the wind, and I see the sea, and I see this, and I see that, and that's what I'm looking at. As well, I'm looking at that tanker that might be dead ahead. Or that carnival ship adrift.
All right, we've got another question up the top there.
Yes, I was just wondering what the general lifespan of one of these cruise ships is.
It depends. so far in experience, I would say that 25 to 30 years is getting pretty long in the tooth. It really depends on how we take care of it. And like anything, it will wear out eventually, but we can keep rebuilding it up to a point. I would say that these big ships, like Oasis class, will have a very long life cycle because the platform is so large and it's profitable. So this we can never deny, and it will always be that, and therefore justify the investment to forever keep it to our standard. So I would think that these ships will live a much longer life. And who knows, it could be 40 years, it could be 45 years or 50. We take care of the ship. Ships don't heal themselves. If there's damage, we have to fix it. And we take good care of our ship and try not to damage it and, run it through a storm and bend it, too many times, and all of that. So it all depends on how hard a life she's lived, just like anybody. And you see our Vision class ships, our Mega class ships are now being scrapped, and they were sold. Some were scrapped because it was no longer financially viable to invest in them any further. And it's partly driven by the market, and there's a number of factors. Technology as well. It's expensive to retrofit a ship. When technology moves on to the point that we have to retrofit, that becomes expensive. And is it worth it? So these questions will always come.
All right, we've got time for 2 more questions this morning, so we're going to take this one with Garcia and then down the front here to finish off.
Yes, I just want to thank you for your years of service. I just think in regular careers, there are seasoned people, and then you get to the point where you begin to train people. So do you see yourself moving out of this role and becoming more of a mentor, or like using all this experience you have to train younger?
Yeah, good question. No, I am actually now. This is one of the big roles as a captain, is to mentor the younger ones coming up and train my replacement. So I'm trying to get my second in command, the staff captain, to learn. I'm trying to pass along everything I can, and one day when he's captain, he will do the same. Pay it forward, so to speak. So I mentor the younger ones, and the ones who are eager and hungry to learn, I will spend the most time with. But yes, indeed, we are all in a culture here in this company of training everyone for the next step. We really do. This is really a big part of any leader in the team, to train. And we train and train and train constantly. You will no sooner get promoted to one position, and then you're training for the next one, all throughout your time in that position. And depending on how it goes and what opportunities there are, you go up. And, Michael Bailey, our president of the company, was a guest services officer. And, the opportunity is immense. And we are all training all the time. So my job as captain is to do the same. And I will train everyone and pass along whatever I know as much as I can, for sure. It's our future.
All right, down the front here.
You have such a fantastic crew, like all Royal Caribbeans have. In January, maybe you could get a sympathetic ear to get free internet for all the crew. They do spend a lot of time away from their families. We did have this conversation the other day.
We have that conversation every day, actually. Food and internet. Yes. Don't worry, we know. Yeah. As we get more satellites up in the sky and as our bandwidth increases, indeed. But we are where we are at the moment.
Yep.
Doing our best. There's only so much bandwidth, and the more we give away, the less there is. So if you think your internet's slow now, Watch out. So, but yes, we're working on that. It's improving all the time. We're using the low orbit satellites that are being launched out of Port Canaveral on a weekly basis. Yeah. It's pretty cool when we see those go off too. Yeah. Usually when they're flying.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our Captain's Corner here this morning, but thank you so much for joining us. And do continue to enjoy the day. Captain, thank you very much for coming along this morning and answering those fantastic questions.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you all for all that we do. None of it would be possible without all of you. So thank you. Thank you so much. I'll remain behind and I'll be in the lobby there if you have any more questions or you want to say hello. Thank you.
Thank you once again, and thank you to Captain Rob. Ladies and gentlemen, join us up on the Royal Promenade at 11 o'clock this morning for our Veterans Tribute. We, of course, pay tribute each and every week to our heroes and men and women of service. So do come along and join us there at 11 o'clock this morning. But enjoy your final day here on board the Wonder of the Seas.